The first and foremost is in April this year, China rolled out restrictions on heavy rare earths. And what this did is it put a chokehold on the industry because all of a sudden we had a supply chain disruption. And the automotive industry was particularly hard hit. Within 8 weeks, we saw that Ford actually had to pause production of its Explorer model owing to these supply shortages. What the U.S. did in response was a full-out effort to warp speed access to these rare earths and these magnets. Most recently, we saw the Department of Defense make a $400 million investment in MP Materials, essentially putting the U.S. government as the biggest shareholder to accelerate production, both of the rare earths and the permanent magnets.
Yeah, we've talked about that, which was kind of got all of us like, wait a minute, is this now a state-owned entity? Joe, come on in on this.
Yeah, I mean, this investment that we've talked about now for a few weeks, right, was a signal to the market. I think that was kind of the main thing. It was a signal to the market from the Trump administration, from the Defense Department, that the United States was serious about a mine-to-magnet supply chain. They were also signaling the real concern that the United States has over the fact that China has put in these export controls, as Gracelin points out. We'd seen rare earths as export controls starting back in 2023. The difference maker here was the magnets. And that's why companies like GM came out and publicly said, the magnets are a problem, we're short, and we're having to stop production. So we now have a situation where MP Materials has been given a $400 million investment, equity investment by the DoD, loan financing to become a magnet producer. This is a miner.
So problem solved?
And problem.
I'm just being silly.
Right, exactly. Problem. Right. And actually, that sarcasm is very much the conversation I have heard constantly now for the past few weeks in the market, which is in anything in manufacturing is hard because just because you say you're going to build a plant doesn't mean the plant will just come together and work straight out of the gates. And I think there are questions among many in the market of this mining company. Can they figure out how to produce so many magnets at scale in the time needed?
So listen, you brought us Gracelin. You ask her something.
So my question is, I mean, Gracelin, you're sitting here now weeks later after this announcement. What do you think?
We're giving all the right signals in from both the supply and the demand side intervention. You know, a lot of what this MP Materials deal with Department of Defense was it was supply side. It was saying we need more rare earths and we need permanent magnets. What this new big announcement from General Motors is really telling us is they're also giving the demand signal by agreeing to offtake. Joe, we've talked about this before, but one of the difficulties is the price environment. Prices are generally pretty low. By stimulating demand and showing that there is an offtaker, what we're really saying is that we are meeting a market need, and that's a really positive signal. General Motors as a whole has had first mover advantage on a number of deals related to this. We saw them with the MP Materials deal. Now we see it with the Noveon deal for the magnet. So really it's showing that it is a full mine-to-magnet effort if we want to reduce our reliance on China.
Do you think now that we're showing there's commercial market for this, commercial demand, as you're saying, are we now in a show me moment? Like, prove it that you can actually deliver these magnets?
Absolutely. We've already seen that Noveon Magnetics is already making their first magnets, and they were delivered last month, which is a really great first step. Now what we need to make sure that they can do, along with some of these other magnet efforts like MP Materials' second production facility, is to make sure that we can ramp up at a level that is quick enough, because we know that whatever trade agreement is reached with China is still transitory and time-bound, and we could have future disruption. So we now need to make sure that we can ramp up fast enough.
Can we? In your view? As Joe said, none of this is easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is enough market pressure to do it. You know, I was always reminded that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we developed a vaccine for a virus that we didn't know existed in less than a year. America's strong suit is innovation when under pressure. And I think what we've seen from the amount of government support, but also the way that we have embraced that challenge from a private sector point of view, that we are well on our way to being able to do that.
I mean, China controls over 60% of the global rare earth mining and more than 85% of processing capacity. And of course, we know that the U.S. really sees rare earth independence as essentially a security concern. How does the U.S. fit into all this? I know you mentioned that you do think that we have a stake in the game, but let me know to what degree.
So I want to take you back to actually 2007 and 2008 quickly, when our auto industry started collapsing and we saw significant bailouts to the automotive industry, given the impact on jobs and investment in a really important sector to the U.S. economy. We have skin in the game to ensure that our automotive supply chain does not have disruptions, because we know what the economic consequences, not just in the Midwest, but to the entire country that relies on it. So when we think about it through the lens of the economic health of our country, as well as importantly national security, given that magnets are used in a variety of defense technologies, we have every incentive to get this right.
Gracelin, what's your biggest concern, though, moving forward? I know you're optimistic, but what do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle actually making this happen?
Can we do it fast enough? I mean, a lot of these things are very, very small scale. You know, in MP Materials' first year, they're actually only going to make 1% of the amount of permanent magnets China made back in 2018. So the ramp up will take time. And given the risk to further disruptions, the big question is, can we do it fast enough? And that's really difficult to to be able to say that now.
We're talking with Gracelin Baskaran, Director of the Critical Mineral Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies out there in our Washington News Bureau. Our own Joe Doe is also with us, with Nora and myself. Hey, one of the things, Gracelin, I wanted to ask you is, how important, though, is this market for China and their economy? And if the U.S. is backing off, who does China then start talking with to do deals? And are we starting to see signs of that?
China's economy is already struggling. We saw this past year they had the highest levels of deflation in modern Chinese history. Economic growth has really slowed. The IMF has actually flagged a number of these trade risks as a really big economic risk that China is facing. Anytime you have a new players coming on, because remember, it's not just the United States. We have countries like Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Malaysia are also going to bring facilities online in the next couple of years. This is a significant risk to China's future, because they've relied on supplying the entire global economy until this far.
So could we have a glut in a few years? I mean, I know they're called rare earth, and we've already debunked that, but could we have a glut essentially in a few years? Or impossible?
That's a real risk we have. The reason a lot of mineral prices are actually quite low, like lithium is down 85% in 3 years, nickel is down about 80% in 3 years, is because there's oversupply on the market. Oversupply is a real risk, and one that the market hasn't really conditioned itself to understanding if we get to a point where we have far more than we need and prices get pushed down further.
Yeah. Talk to me about what this means for a lot of those technology companies when we think about rare earth materials. How does this impact something like the likes of Apple, for instance, and iPhones?
So, I mean, technology firms need rare earths across the board, and that's part of why Apple signed this deal. And increasingly, companies are willing to pay a premium to not be reliant on China, because they saw that manufacturing could come to a grinding halt in the instance that China wants to roll out these restrictions. So generally for tech firms, they'd rather have too many options to buy from rather than not enough.
Gracelin, I think one of the questions I have is, when you're looking out 2 years, 3 years from now, where's the investor class on this space? Do you feel like, yeah, great, we're seeing some offtake agreements, there's real commercial interest, but at some point the rubber's going to meet the road, and the question will be, where are the investors going to sit?
The investors are really going to be a couple of different sources. So given that rare earths and permanent magnets are used in virtually every sector of the economy, a lot of these investments are going to be made by off-takers. So we have seen already General Motors, really probably, and Apple being really signs of what is to come going forward. We expect to kind of see these deals being cut across the economy, particularly with President Trump's recent announcements, for example, on semiconductor tariffs, right? Which is really an effort to incentivize sourcing here in America. So when you kind of add up the aggregation of efforts ranging from tariffs to supply side intervention to stockpiling, which was part of the new Budget Act, it's really a full-throttled effort to ensure that we are sourcing from America for American companies.
Hey, last question, Gracelin, before we wrap. We do have MP Materials reporting after the closing bell. As I mentioned, stock's up almost 350% year to date. It's up another 4.3% in today's session. What are you watching out for? And just got about 30 seconds.
I'm looking to see how fast MP Materials can deliver. The amount of support MP Materials has gotten is absolutely unprecedented, and now they have the significant task of being able to scale up quick enough to meet both our national security and economic security goals. So I want to know how fast they're going to deliver on the very high expectations that the U.S. government has placed before them, as well as industry in this country.